It's the Morning Marketing Machine, here to grow your e-commerce business with proven marketing strategies and tactics, so you can run your business with machine-like precision. My name is Douglas Levin. Let's dive in. So, welcome everyone to Morning Marketing Machine. So, we've got a special guest today, and I'm really excited because Matt Sheeran is. I know I'm probably butchering your last name.
No, it's close enough.
Yes. So he's here today, and pretty much whenever I've got anything marketing wise, like I'm always looking at what he's doing because he's the guy you want to know. It's pretty much him and Brian are like the two that I always look to. So Matt's been kind of in commerce for like 4 years or so, focuses on apparel, print on demand, and he's someone you really want to pay attention to. So I thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Douglas. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I consider myself a little bit of a marketing nerd, I guess, right? Like, so I just chew all that stuff up. Like for me, it's the thing that I get excited about when I see something new or novel or something that somebody's doing in a different vertical that I feel like I can apply to what I'm doing. Like I love having the ability to share it. So Douglas and I are both in a coaching group with Brian Bowman called The Intensive, and I'm always going in there and like sharing the latest things that I find and everything else. Because for me, it's that, like I said, that's the thing that is very interesting for me. It's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. I know. Like whenever I'm in there, I'm always like looking at like Brian he's always got amazing stuff, and like I've learned like I feel like 90% of my marketing skills from him. But I feel
Right.
like anytime I'm in there, you're always the person like, okay, what's Matt saying? Like it's got to be something good if you took the time to do something for it. Like I'm
Yeah.
always looking at it that way.
I mean, it's funny. Brian's actually kind of how I got like started in a lot of this stuff, but I've been doing marketing for a long time. I actually, outside of e-commerce, I own my own brick and mortar business, and that's kind of like what I did. So back into like SEO and that kind of stuff. Like I've been in marketing for a long time, and I got a lot of help at the very beginning from people that didn't have to help me, like that just out of the goodness of their heart reached out and offered advice, gave me, answered questions when I didn't know something. And so I always try and pay that forward. Like I just feel like it's kind of my obligation. Like where I am in life is largely responsible because other people did the same thing for me. So I need to make sure that I put that back into the world.
Yeah, and you've always been so great with your time. I know whenever I've got questions, you're always great with it. And it's the thing that like I know I try and do, and I see like a lot of like the people that have been at it for a little while, like they understand that idea of like, all right, I was in that same position that you were,
Hmm.
right? When you're starting off, like as long as you're putting in the work and you're trying to understand and learn and grow from it, then I got no problem trying to figure out how to help you. I mean,
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like if you're going to ask me a question, first I want to see that you actually take action, you implement the thing, right? I don't want you to come back the next day and go, okay, how do I do this? Can you do this for me? Right? Like I have enough work on my plate. I have enough things that I need to do. I don't need to take on anybody else's work, but I will always be there to offer some advice or give you whatever I think my best idea is with regards to whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So obviously, we were talking a little bit beforehand, and I know you're crazy busy with stuff. So one of the things that obviously we talk a lot about mindset and
Mhm.
everything kind of overcoming obstacles. So what would you say right now is your most important thing that you're working on?
So the most important thing I'm working on right now is kind of navigating the waters for Q3 to prepare for Q4, right? So as a step in that direction, one of the things that's really challenged our business this year has been fulfillment. Like many people, shipping is kind of a mess. Supply chains are not great right now. So we actually have taken the manufacturing side of our business into our business. We've taken it over. Whereas before we were doing print on demand, we're actually doing all of our own printing and fulfillment. And so that's been my number one challenge right now. Not only in the sense that like we're figuring out the logistics and bringing in a totally new skill set that we've never done before, but also to planning out inventory management, which I never had to do with print on demand. I have a background in manufacturing, so it's kind of like I have plenty of experience with that, and I'm okay with that. But the challenging thing for me right now is more than anything else is the marketing side of things. I think that Q3 for me is all about audience like audience share, getting as big an audience as I possibly can, so I can build remarketing audiences as I go into Q4. Because I feel like ad spend in Q4 is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be really, really expensive to get like top of funnel and to bring people into your funnel who have never interacted with your brand before. So I'm trying to get in front of as many people as possible right now, so I have warm retargeting audiences as we go into Q3 or Q4. I'm sorry.
Right, and that's a great way to do it. And I know, like, when I've talked to other people, they're looking at Q4 as well, and they're looking at it more from the perspective of like inventory planning and the other aspects
Mm-hmm.
of like obviously making sure you don't got out of stock, which is obviously great. You want to make sure, especially with this Q4, with what Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the usual stuff, and now you got for the people on the Amazon side, you've got Prime Day in October. You're gonna have like
Yeah.
cards, all the other kind of things. So yeah, there's that too. But you have to understand if you're going to be doing anything in terms of Q4, like what are you going to do about customers? Like, and that's obviously what you're talking about here, which a
Yeah.
lot of people they don't want to pay attention to. But I mean, that's great that you're kind of doing that right now.
I think so. For me, what I've noticed is, because I have a lot of friends in both spaces, right? Like I have friends who are like just primarily your direct to consumer Shopify business, and then I have friends who are Amazon solely businesses, and then I have some that are kind of somewhere in the middle. And there's going to be challenges on both sides. So Amazon, you're dealing with ASIN restrictions. You're dealing with how much you can actually get into the fulfillment centers right now. And I have some friends who do some seasonal stuff where that's a problem. And then on the same side too, on our side here, where we're doing our own fulfillment or people that are using 3PLs and everything else, I think that that's going to be a challenge as well, just because I think that shipping in general is going to be stretched to the max going into Q4. And so my mentality is, and this is why I'm thinking about audience for Q4, is I know that I'm going to be really, really hammered on the logistics side of things in Q4. Like I know that that's where a lot of my focus is going to have to be. So I want to make sure that I take care and set the groundwork in place and have a warm audience, have my email list working, have everything else working so that I have traffic coming to my site and I'm not having to spend as much time on that. As much as I can automate on the front end there and build our nurture sequences out and everything else, I want to do that now so that when we get into Q4 and it's crunch time and we're working our asses off, I'm not having to focus as much on that.
Yeah, definitely. It's the whole thing of there's enough time right now to plan if you're looking
Mm-hmm.
ahead to it. Obviously we read a lot. Like I know Brian reads a lot, you read a lot, and I know one of the books I was reading was like 12 Week Cure, and they pretty much talk about the same things. Like once you get into the thick of things, it's mostly about reacting and tweaking and pivoting at that
Mm-hmm.
point. But if you got a good plan in place now and you're ahead of the game, that's going to be a lot easier as you get to whatever kind of bumps in the road you get.
Yep.
Versus if you're just kind of, all right, well, yeah, I got inventory, I'm good, and then you get into it, it's just going to be really difficult.
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing. It's like I feel like I'm building a framework right now, right? Like I'm building the framework for us to be able to grow because I expect ridiculous, crazy growth in Q4. So I want to make sure that I have the framework that will support the business growing the way that I think it will.
Awesome. So I was just bringing up one of the books. So what's a current book that you're reading right now?
So I normally read. I don't know if I'm unusual in this way, but I typically have like 5 or 6 books at a time that I read. And the reason being it's just like whatever currently I'm feeling like going through. So I'm actually rereading Robert Cialdini's Influence. If you've never read it, I think it's one of the most influential marketing books out there. Every time I read it, I come up with new insights, but specifically this time I'm actually listening to it on an audiobook instead of reading it. And I've always found it to be a little bit of a dense read, and it was one of those things where I had to really focus on it. And the audiobook is fantastic; it's really good. And so there's been some really big takeaways that I've taken away from it, just in terms of like how to structure offers with the way like the language and the kind of things that you do to help people to overcome fears and overcome the things that they're doing, and the way that you can structure. It's just wild. Like it's a crazy, crazy book because they talk about like how literally like you can make an offer as an example, right? If you were to make an offer where you had 3 choices and there's a low price thing for just the internet offer, right? Then there's a mid-priced offer for the internet thing plus the physical product, okay? And then there's a high price offer, right? Which is only legitimate, or no, I'm sorry. I take this back. So there's a mid-price offer for the physical thing, okay? but then you bundle together the physical thing and the electronic thing and make it the same price as the physical thing, and suddenly like three-quarters of the people will take that deal right there. Whereas before, if it was just the electronic thing and the physical thing, everybody would go for the lower priced offer, right? And it just has to do with the way that like the mind works when you see even something that makes no sense at all, right? So like you have a $59 item, and then it's like 125 and 125, but you're getting the free thing, right? And everybody takes the other thing. And so like that's where I'm really enjoying going back to kind of my roots, which is like, to me, this is very fundamental in marketing, right? Like it's not about the tactics. It's not about the latest like strategy, SMS or whatever, right? Like this is like fundamental stuff. How does the human brain work? And why does psychology work when you're doing your marketing? And why should you do certain things and not do other things?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I know that's something that obviously like you talk about all the time. I've heard Brian talk about it. Like it comes down to like the buyer psychology part of it. Just like
Mhm.
um like I know he's talked about it too in terms of like everyone that's around today, they're looking back at like the godfathers of marketing, and
Yep.
it's all simple stuff, but like really understanding that psychology part is the thing that I guess a lot of people aren't really doing when they're kind of digging into like your ideal customer and the other aspects of it to like really get to the nuts and bolts of why, well, like the problems they're having and why they're gonna ultimately buy, right?
Right, exactly. And I mean, even just, I realize your audience is kind of a mix. Like even on Amazon, right? Like just as simple as like coming up with convincing headlines for like your headline ads, right? Or I guess they're sponsored. Are they sponsored brand ads now? They've changed the name on them since I ran them last.
It,
But
it,
anyways,
it,
like do,
it'll be the same, the different name next week, right?
right, exactly. But like doing stuff like that, where you have like a convincing headline that hits the pain point for that customer, can make a massive difference in your ad. And you become a lot more aware of it when you're not depending on Amazon for your traffic, when you have to actually like interact with customers directly and solve their problems. But um, psychology, I think, is way underrated in like successful e-commerce businesses, because understanding what your customers' problems are will allow you to solve them better, allow you to make a better product, allow you, all of those things that make a better business, instead of thinking about, okay, here's a product, I know it's hot, I can see that it's selling this many units a month, I need to make that version of this for Amazon. It's like start thinking about what is the customer who's buying that product really looking for, and then it just opens up a whole other avenues.
Oh yeah, yeah, big time. And that's the thing. Like I know I've heard it said many times. I say the same thing as well. It's like all you're ever looking at is that your ideal customer has a problem, and then
Mhm.
ultimately your product is supposed to be something that solves that problem. That's as simple as it is. Like, is your
Yep.
product doing that? Well, if it is, then it will eventually work if you, as long as you market it correctly. And then
Yep.
when you're looking at new products, it's the same way. What can I identify that's going to help my ideal customer solve their problem? That's all it
Right.
really.
And the beauty of thinking about customer first too, especially like specifically in the Amazon world, is now when you have multiple SKUs within that vertical, now you have multiple things that a customer will come back for, and because they know, like, and trust your brand, they're going to start with your thing when they're looking for the next thing that's going to solve their problem. Um, that's the way that's uh, big thanks to Brian, because it completely changed my outlook on business when I started working with him, to become much more customer centric. And like that's entirely the focus of our business for the last 2.5 years has been, we've completely shifted away from a product model to a customer model.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes things a lot easier. I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
like obviously, yes, you have to do the research. You have to obviously, like we were talking about earlier, do the work, right? But if you're doing that, then you don't have to worry about as much anymore about what's my next product going to be. Like
Mm-mm.
they're telling you.
Your customers will tell you
Yeah,
every time.
yeah, and now it's just about what can I do to give them a great experience, give them value,
Mhm.
other things along those lines, and then you've got your raving fans, and now it's not as big of a deal anymore in terms of like building your own list or any of those kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously I love talking to you about the marketing side of it, and it seems you're interested in too. Like, so would you say like what's the part of the business that you love the most? Is it marketing? Is it something else? Or
Oh, it's the marketing stuff by far. Yeah, it is definitely not the fulfillment side of things. It is not customer service. Although customer service is okay, because sometimes you do get an opportunity to like to get some good feedback, and we have good customers in general. Like we work really hard to keep our customers happy. But yeah, marketing is the thing that I feel like is my my gift, right? Like it's the thing that comes easy to me. It's the thing that I enjoy doing when I wake up in the morning. I don't have to like get motivation together to be able to write emails and those kind of things. So yeah, that's the part of the business that by far I enjoy the most.
Oh, awesome. And I'm gonna kind of switch it
Mhm.
here and say, all right. So now, like, what's the part of the business that you love the least?
It's the stuff that my wife is much better at than I am. So um, she's much better at like the detail side of things, right? So like making sure that our inventory levels stay on track, making sure that ordering is done properly, and that we actually have the supplies that we need, and making sure that we're uh, keeping track of all of our inventory and we're not running out of things when we need it and those kind of things. That is definitely not my that does not make me joyous. While I love using spreadsheets to be able to simplify things, I don't like sitting in front of spreadsheets and just staring at them and doing data entry.
Makes sense. So one of the things I know I've kind of I've talked about it more in the group and obviously like other places as well. But you talk about the idea of like a negative mindset and obviously us as business owners, we're constantly trying to overcome stumbling blocks and trying to figure out
Mhm.
how to get past it. So when you're kind of like whether it's in a funk for whatever reason, or you're trying to overcome something that you just can't get past, like what have you tried in those situations to kind of get out of that funk or get over the stumbling block, and ultimately what's worked best for you in those situations?
Um, so the thing that two things. So I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I read Ryan Holiday's "The Obstacle Is the Way." Probably, I mean, I read it right after it came out. And I don't remember when it was. It was like had to have been right around 2012, I want to say. Um, and it really resonated with me because I was a stoic thinker without understanding that like the whole philosophical portion behind it. And then once I started to get like that framework behind it, it really helped me to flip the switch to where problems were no longer problems, like obstacles were opportunities. And like that sounds super cheesy and it sounds like it's trite, but it's not, because what you find out is when you switch your way of thinking to where an obstacle is a problem, right? An obstacle is a stumbling block or it's a brick wall that you can't go through. And instead of thinking about it as a lever in your business, um, when you figure out how to take that obstacle and flip it on and invert it, right? Like something Brian talks about all the time. He's a big fan of Charlie Munger. Invert the problem and figure out how you can take that as an advantage, how you can turn something that was an obstacle. So in our case, the obstacle here for us was we were having problems with fulfillment because our printers, through no fault of their own, were having problems with their supply chain, right? The same thing that everything it's happening with everybody. And also they were dealing with massive increase of volume. And so I could look at that and I could whine and bitch and complain, or I can look at it and go, okay, how can I solve this problem for ourselves right now? Right. And so what we did is we brought it in house. It was a substantial investment on our part. Like it wasn't cheap, but it was something that we had to do, a decent amount of homework on and decide that, okay, this is going to kind of affect some other plans that we have. But in terms of what was going to give us the surest path to a good outcome later this year, when, it's crunch time, we need to make the most amount of money because, Q4 results in about 40% of our total overall revenue for the year. It was one of those things where it was like, all right, well, here, this is the obstacle. Like my fulfillment side is just hammered and it is what it is. Like this is 2020. We know it's happening. We can take this on. It involves a lot more physical work on our part, a lot more stuff that we're going to have to take on and kind of get rid of other aspects that we're doing. But it's going to result in a massive increase in our margin, a massive increase in like our ability to take care of our customers, fulfill things faster, give us better control over our product, all of those things, right? So I always try and look at that. I always try and look at like whatever the problem is, and is there a way that I can invert it and make it a strength, make it something that fixes it for us. The other thing that I do, and this goes back to when I was actually I coached high school football for 7 years, and I had this team that was not very talented. They were quite honestly god awful. They were really bad, but um, they're good kids, and it was super frustrating because they're trying really hard every single week, and we just kept trying things and trying things and trying things. And I remember the head coach that year, we were talking over some things after leaving a game, and we were just both kind of down a little bit. And he's like, well, just come back tomorrow. We'll reevaluate everything, go over it. Right. And I came back the next day and I was in a lot better mood. He's like, what happened? He's like, I just sat down and I wrote down what I felt like was the best option for us to do and put it down on paper and had a plan and took action. Right. Like, and that's what snapped me out of it. It wasn't necessarily the thinking things. It was just the simple act of like writing out what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And then taking action on that thing is the thing that kind of helped me to snap out of it. Like just taking those steps forward. Cause like momentum, even though it is a psychological thing, I think it's a real thing. Like getting into momentum and getting used to taking steps forward, getting used to taking actions is really, really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I know on my end, I've seen the same thing in terms of like you talk about the idea of obviously taking action. It is really hard in terms of like I can't remember the quote from Brian, but he always says something like you once you start like the Rolling Stone or whatever it is, where
Mhm.
like it starts to gather speed and then it's just keeps going. But it's just about getting that first like motion going is usually like the hardest part. Once you actually have that plan and you've
Yep.
got something to get started, it becomes a lot easier. I know for me it's the same way.
It kind of becomes self-fulfilling a little bit, right? Like it's just like you take that first step and it causes a reaction, and then you have to take an action in result because of that. And it just kind of keeps on going, you know? Um, it also in the same sense, like the Biggie Smalls, like, more money, more problems. Like it's the same thing in business, right? Like we all think that as we gain success and as things become, we get more orders and we have more money coming in, all those things, right? Like the things are going to become easier. Like we're going to be able to hire the person that's going to make my job easier. And what we find out is when we hire that person, now we have to take care of managing that person, putting up the standard operating procedures, all of those things that like allow that person to function within your business and replace you. And so, the more success we have, the more we work at things, and the more that we have success in our business, it just generates new problems. It doesn't take care of the old problems. It's just your problems become bigger in scale with relation to the scale of your business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at anybody, you're looking at Bill Gates or
Mhm.
Bezos or any of those people. Obviously, like no matter where you get, you could be to that level in terms of how much money you're bringing in a year and all those other things. There's always going to be new problems coming in. It's just like there is no grass is greener kind of a thing going on. It's just a part
Mhm.
of business. It's part of life, right? And
Yeah, I mean, you don't get into entrepreneurship because it's easy. Like I think there's this popular misconception that the path to an easy life or good money is like you no longer have to work for somebody else. And what you find out is successful entrepreneurs are their own worst boss because they push themselves much harder than they ever would working a 9 to 5.
yeah, and that kind of brings up like another question I've got too is like since most business owners are like that where like they'll work their ass off, right, and they'll work like 20-hour days or whatever it is, and a lot of times they'll like neglect family or whatever it is. It's like I gotta do this, I gotta grind is kind of like usually like how it ends up being as like a
Yeah.
business owner. Like for you, like what is a work-life balance to you? Is that something that you strive for, or what do you
I think the work life balance is overrated in some sense and
think?
underrated in others. I think it's very individualistic. I think it depends on first off, how is your family life constructed, right? Like, do you have a wife and kids? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have nobody, right? Like, so those are very different situations. Um, so I'm married. Luckily for me, my wife is a part of our business, right? Like she's my business partner. She's directly connected to it. So it does solve a lot of those issues that I know that some of my friends who are entrepreneurs and then their wife works at standard 9 to 5, like there's some challenges there, right? Because for someone who works in that 9 to 5, a lot of times when you're done with that 9 to 5, like you get to turn it off. That part of your brain gets shut off and you can move on to doing other things. Whereas an entrepreneur, we're on 24/7, like regardless of whatever our outward appearance might be, like we're on 24/7. It really is. Um, so I think that work-life balance becomes a very individual thing, and it comes down to a couple of things. Do you feel good doing what you're doing, and does your significant other feel good also, right? Because you have to balance that out. Like if they need time, attention, you need to make sure that you are building that into your life, because you're an entrepreneur. You have the ability to control all of those things going on. We may not be able to control the outside things affecting us, but we can control our actions. We can control our decisions. So for me, work-life balance largely revolves around how busy we are. I try to be very mindful of the fact that if we are not super busy, because we have we're an apparel business, so it's seasonal. There are times where we are super busy, and there are times where we are pretty average. We'll have orders coming in, but it's not crazy. And so in non-COVID times, we shape our life around that. Like that's when we like travel and go do things and all that stuff. Now, I don't think that there's really a whole lot of work-life balance in my life, because there's just, what else am I going to do? I'm not a TV person. I'm not somebody that sits down and watches like all of the shows on Netflix or anything else. I read. And so I try to carve out probably a half hour to an hour every single day that I can read. I try to spend time with my wife. So we have a pretty nice backyard. We have a pool, patio, the whole 9 yards. So we try to spend some time outside together, spend some time in the pool, when it's hot, like it is right now in California. But I also don't try to have like a fixed, like I need to spend this amount of time not doing anything and this amount of time working. It's more of just like, do I feel like working? Okay, then I'm going to work. Do I not feel like working? One thing I am trying to incorporate, and I've done a very poor job of it, is I am trying to take a day off every single week, because I find that if I don't have a forcing function that forces me to take that day off, I won't. I'll just work. I default to that. And I have noticed the difference in my performance, right? Like, so how well I think, how well I react, how well I sleep, all of those things when I do take that day off versus when I don't.
Right. Is there a way that you've been able to force yourself to take that day off? Because I know like that's a problem for me sometimes too, in terms of like, oh, well, I got this one thing I got to do or whatever it is that's coming up.
It's just a commitment to yourself, and you have to hold it. When so much of our operation is run from our homes right now, like I'm sure you're the exact same situation, right? Like my home is my office right now. I don't have, the goal is for us eventually down the road to open up a warehouse / office space to be able to have all of this stuff there. But right now I'm just not going to deal with it. But right now it's just, you have to make a commitment to yourself and actually hold yourself to it. That involves sometimes, shutting off your devices, because it's the avenue to work, right? Like just getting a message or a notification or an email, and suddenly you get pulled down a rabbit hole and you spend 4 hours in your Saturday where you're not supposed to be working, dealing with customer service problems or all of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I know on my end, like one of the things you were talking about a little bit earlier was the idea of in terms of like when we're talking about work-life balance. I know one of the issues that I had with that specifically was like we talked about books, and I recently read 12-Week Year, and they talk about the idea of your business life actually aligning to your vision versus the other way around. Like I know that was a big problem for me. It was like I was pretty much that type of person where like I would be neglecting family or like I'd be, because I feel like, oh, okay, I gotta grind. I gotta do, like, I've got these things I gotta do. And then I'd work like 6, 7 days a week. And that one day off sometimes would be me still wanting to work, and having a hard time and not really aligning with what it should have been in my eyes. Like when I'm actually looking at it. And so that was the big thing for me, I know, is like the flip. Whereas like, all right, for me personally, I'm doing this wrong. Everything in my personal life is serving my business, and the whole point of me doing this is so that I could have the life that I want. So now for me, that was that change. We're like, all right, I still am going to work on the business. I'm still going to work my ass off on the business, but what can I do? Because my family is part of my purpose, right? So at that point, it comes down to, all right, what can I do to make sure that my business aligns with my vision? Like at that point.
Yeah, I think all entrepreneurs struggle with that, honestly. Like it is very difficult once you start to have some success. It becomes very addicting to not continue to feed that machine. And it just becomes habit. Like I think we all start with a vision in terms of like, this is the life that I want to build, and this is the reason I'm doing it, right? Like I'm going to put this into reality. I'm going to create this thing, and then life has a way of getting in the way, and you end up making adjustments and making I don't want to say excuses, but like you adapt and you realize that like that might not necessarily be the thing, but you push it off, right? Like we push off that like, well, this is why I'm doing this now, but in the future it's going to be better. And then what you find out is a year down the road, the future is not there, and it might actually be worse. So we've been in that situation. We've actually had that discussion, my wife and I, because the reason that she went into this thing versus like going back, she's an interior designer by trade. So going back into working for an interior design business or opening her own thing was like, she was just kind of tired of dealing with client services and all those things. And, we felt like it'd be a better situation for her to be able to stay home, work from home and do these things. And, we reevaluated things kind of at the beginning of this year, and I think I may have talked to you about this at Funnel Hacking Live. Like I made a radical change in my life from basically end of January till now. Whereas last year, like I had a very public persona. I was doing a lot of coaching and a lot of just doing a lot of things where I was interacting with a lot of people. And we made the decision that like it was really affecting the ability we had to spend quality time with each other and just our overall life. It was just impacting a lot of things in our life. So we pulled back completely. I turned off the coaching business. I left the membership group that I had created, made some pretty big changes in my life because the balance that we wanted, the life that we were leading was just not going to happen in that direction. It just wasn't. It was just all encompassing, right? Like you can't constantly be on social media and constantly answering questions in Facebook Messenger or Slack or anything else and be able to expect quality time with your significant other.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember when we kind of met up at Funnel Hacking Live, and you were talking about that. That was a good group too. And yeah, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, it's about you, right? I mean, like, yeah, you can have millions of dollars, you can have all of these employees, all of the other stuff around you, but if you're not happy with it, if it's affecting your life, your relationship, I mean, ultimately you got to remember, like, why are you trying to do this in the first place?
Yeah. Brian asks a question. It's like, what is the one thing that will make everything else unnecessary or easier, right? And I really try and incorporate that into what we're doing right now. It's just like, how do I make my life easier? How do I get there with less steps? How do I get there with less effort on my part? How do I automate the things in my life that are holding us back to make things easier? Back to the focus on Q3 about setting all of this stuff in advance, like that will make my life easier when I get to Q4.
Definitely. So with that being said, then what would you say is your purpose for doing what you do now?
It's an interesting question. I am infinitely curious. Like I like to learn and I like to try new things, and I get bored extremely easily. Like I get bored super easily. So the reason that I do the things that I do now more often than not is because I'm scratching an itch, right? Like, so I want to see, how does this work? How does that work? And if I do this and I tweak this, like, how does that change the outcome to here? Like and so for me, it's intellectual curiosity. It's the enjoyment of being able to market the way that I want to market without having to, there is a lot of joy having run marketing for other people in being able to just make decisions and pull the trigger and create campaigns and create offers the way that you want to do it, not have to get approval on things, not have to wait for somebody to make a decision or wait for somebody to think about the price or anything else. It's like, I really enjoy that. And so I really enjoy just working for myself and not having other partners in there that I have to answer or make decisions about, or, I just enjoy having the control over my business to build the business exactly the way that I want to. And that's not necessarily in a purpose, right? Like the purpose behind the things that I do is to build the life that I want to lead, which is a life that has both mental fulfillment, right? Like just, it challenges me. It helps me to grow, but also we make a pretty significant contribution with our business to a couple of different charities. So there's that aspect to it too. So it's fulfilling in that sense. And two, it's one of those things where I I just enjoy what I'm doing right now. Like I really enjoy where my life is overall. There are days where I get up like anybody else and I'm like, I don't want to work on this. But overall, like the good days outnumber the bad. And I've been in positions where the bad days way outnumber the good. And this is way better.
Hey, that's awesome. So this is something I kind of want to ask you as well. So like, obviously, I know all about your marketing. I know, like, I love anytime I see anything from you when you're kind of doing that. But like, what's something about you that people who know you may not know about you?
I'm a pretty open book. Hmm, interesting question. I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty open with most things that I talk about. I don't really have like anything else. I guess I mean for most people that know this, but like for people that don't, like so we're big Disney people. And so last year we it's really weird. Like we're big Disney people, but I've been with my wife for 6 years now. We'd never been to Disneyland together until last year. And so we went with a friend for her birthday and we ended up buying passes with the expectation, okay, we're going to go once, twice a month, whatever, like not a big deal, right? We ended up going, I don't know what the final count was, but it was probably 2 to 3 times a week for like the entire year. Um, I would have never expected that, like ever. Like I enjoyed Disneyland as a kid, but as an adult, I didn't see it being the thing that like I really, really would enjoy. But when we talk about forcing functions, right? Like it was a forcing function for my wife and myself to disconnect from our business because we're not in front of a computer, we're not at home, we're outside, walking around, moving around. We have to actually like interact with people face to face because as an entrepreneur, when you're in this space here, a lot of times you end up not seeing a whole lot of people unless you're going to the post office or something like that. So yeah, that was something last year that was like it was a really good deal, and I actually genuinely miss it now because obviously the park is closed.
Yeah. So what was your favorite rides then?
So my favorite ride is Thunder Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain. It's like the first roller coaster I ever went on as a kid, and it's like I love riding that at night, especially when they have the fireworks going off, and you get the fireworks going off as you're going around, and it's dark and everything else. I don't know. It just reminds me of being a kid. It's just fun.
I remember, I think it was December, we ended up going to Disney World. And
Okay.
obviously, it was like on the way back, I had an appendix burst, but that was a different story.
Oh,
But while I was there, I remember, I think they had it there. I want to say, like, oh, yeah, we spent, I think, 4 days there and just kind of going on there. I remember that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, I didn't think, like, as an adult, you kind of would think about
hmm
those things. But yeah, I mean, uh, probably if we were in the area, we'd probably go more often as well. Right?
yeah. I mean, it's literally less than 30 minutes from my door. Like door to door, it's less than 30 minutes. And if you're in California and you know what like traffic can be like here, like that's super short. Like that's nothing. So yeah, it worked out really well for us. But like everything else with this year, you learn to adapt. You learn to find a way to make things work.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but kind of as we're heading down the home stretch, one question I did want to ask is like, because everyone has their own definition of this, but what's your definition of success?
Um, I think for me, success is freedom at the end of the day, right? It's the freedom to be able to make the decisions I want to make. It's the freedom to be able to take off the time that I want to take. So, like for example, right now, we have moved in a direction where it's going to require a significant investment of our time for the foreseeable future. At least the next 6 months, I don't see us taking any form of time off, which is fine because we wouldn't be able to go anywhere anyways. It's part of the reason why we actually made the move that we did. It's like, it's not like we're traveling. It's not like we're going to be able to vacation. So like, we might as well just make a lot of money while we're here stuck at the house. Um, but for me, like success is freedom. Success is the ability when I want to go on a vacation, I can go on a vacation. When I want to take a trip, I can take a trip. When we want to go have dinner at a nice restaurant, like we just go. We don't ever have to think about the dollars and cents. We don't ever have to think about like scheduling things. I mean, schedule with reason, but I'm saying I don't have to spend 2 years saving up to go to Disney World or something like that, right? So for me, free like, and this is a common thing I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, like it's freedom. It's the ability to control my life and do the things I want to do when I want to do them.
Yeah, hey, that's a great thought, and ultimately, I mean, we're the business owners, right? That's why you kind of get into this, like
Mhm.
most of the people out there, and um, that's where obviously there's the negative side, right? When you're trying to work your ass off, and you get into that negative mindset or the grind, but then there's also the whole reason you did it, like you're saying, like, and ultimately, if you can get there, that's the reason most of us got started. So yeah, definitely echo those thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you can learn to embrace um, the challenges and realize that like the true fulfilling portion of this whole thing is not necessarily like the dollars or the orders coming in and everything else. It's overcoming the challenges to get you to that point. It's getting to the next level. Treating this more as like a game where there's levels and you're leveling up your skills and you're leveling up your business. If you can start to embrace that, I find it's a lot more rewarding experience. Um, like many people when we started out, like we would pay a lot of attention to like, what were our orders like today? What were our sales figures like today? On a day-to-day basis, honestly, I might glance at it once, twice, or whatever. I don't care because I know in aggregate the rest of it will take care of itself. Now, if we have a bad week, I might pay a little bit more attention to figure out what the hell's going on. But like overall, I'm more focused on the operations and the things going on in my business and less focused on the numbers because I know that like if I do that portion of it right and I take care of things, everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are great thoughts. Yeah, I know, and obviously what you're talking about before too, in terms of like that kind of growth aspect, is the way I kind of look at it.
Mhm.
Like, it gets back to the book mindset is one of the examples that I always think of.
Mhm.
Like, what are you going to do so you can learn, so you can kind of get to that next level, and then it's always about what can I learn, how can I grow, and take it, and then like as you were saying, if you just keep going with that mentality and keep working at it, then stuff starts to take care of itself over time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to give one book recommendation that I read recently. I actually recommended it to you too. And actually, I would recommend the audiobook because it's the best audiobook that I've ever listened to. Shoe Dog, which is the Phil Knight memoir, the Nike story. For anybody that's an entrepreneur, I think that book will resonate probably as much or more as any book that you will ever read because it is raw and you get to see that like Phil Knight made it up along the way, the entire way, all the way through to the point where they IPO'd the country or IPO'd the company. Um, it's an incredible, incredible story. It is great storytelling. It is a very easy read, but you will find moments in it where you're just like, holy shit, he is describing my life right now. Because the truth is, like, as much as the marketing guru that's out there that like has your attention and seems to be crushing it, we're all just making it up at the end of the day. Like it more often than not, like I have a couple tricks that maybe other people don't have, and I know how to frame things in a way that make sense sometimes. But there are days where it's just like, I don't know, let's try this, and those happen more often than not.
Well, yeah, and that's obviously like Brian always talks about, like, look at the data, right? And
Mhm.
and it's hard, like when like I said this all the time, like I don't know what I'm doing, like I was a freaking drummer, and I had no business experience, and I made 5,000 mistakes, and I continue to make 5,000 mistakes,
Yep.
right? That's part of the process, and you just kind of go through it, and then hopefully you learn something, and you don't suck as much next time, and you keep making progress. That's
that
really how
that's
it
the
is, right?
it's the secret to life, man. Like it really is. And then when you have those little incremental gains, like you'd be amazed, like how. So we're doing printing for ourselves, right? And like anything, like you would expect it when you've never done it before, you'd expect to make mistakes. But when you make the same mistake, or you have the same result, I shouldn't say it's not the same mistake, but the same result come out after like 2 days of going through a decent amount of inventory, and it's the same problem over and over and over again. When you finally get that problem figured out, like there's a lot of fulfillment in that right there. It's like it's a really, really good feeling. And so that's where, I think so just to simplify it, the growth mindset, like that, if you can find a way to embrace that growth mindset, it makes your life a lot more fulfilling. It makes life a lot more easy. Like it's growth and abundance, gratitude, all of those things, they get thrown a lot as like woo woo, like, you know, all these things. And I understand it if you're someone who is more secular and you don't really think in those terms. I will say that just trying it will have a dramatic effect on your life. Like just try being grateful, try, thinking about how you're growing and all those things. It will have a really dramatic effect on your life.
Yeah, yeah. I know in terms of how it affected me too. Like I was always that kind of like negative mindset for years and
Mm-hmm.
years in my business journey. And really like those things, like I thought the same way in terms of like meditation or affirmations or visualization, any of those kinds of things. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna do that. That just seems like the woo woo kind of things
Yep.
like that. But and there is like a thing behind it though. Like the more I started to try and do that and do it every day, like it's the things you don't think about, but like you're talking to yourself, and instead of me talking about how much of a screw up and I am, and
Mm-hmm.
I keep fucking up. Now I'm trying to like looking at, I'm talking to myself like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna do like, and the more and more you keep doing that, it starts to leave an impression in your mind where you start to see those changes over time.
Yep.
And yeah, you could think of it as woo woo or any of that kind of stuff, but you keep doing that, and eventually, before you know it, you're no longer in a negative mindset, and now you're seeing like, oh wow, look at all this progress I've made. I've learned so much, and I'm happier. I'm more successful for whatever your idea of success is. All those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So Myron Golden, who somebody's big in the ClickFunnels space, and it's not really important to this, but he said something last year which was really illuminating to me, and I've really tried to pass it along because I think it is important. Um, the future is not written. We don't know an hour from now what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen a day from now. Like there's a strong chance that certain things are going to happen. We don't know. And so if you are saying to yourself negative things about the future, like you can't do this or you're not good enough or any of those things, it's a lie because you literally don't know if you're going to die 2 days from now, right? So if we're lying to ourselves about the future in a negative way, right? There's no benefit to that. So why not take the opposite of that and go, if it's all kind of made up, if we have no control over it really at the end of the day, why not focus on the positive? Like tell ourselves a lie that actually has a positive benefit, that doesn't leave us feeling bad. That doesn't, if everything that we're telling ourselves about in terms of what our future is going to be like isn't guaranteed, let's focus on the positive because, at least that's got a positive benefit to it.
Yeah, hey, those are great thoughts. I love that, and obviously, like I said, I don't want to keep you too long. I'm sure I could talk to you for another hour or two, but I figure I'll end it here. But thank you so much for coming on, Matt. And I will say, like to everyone that's listening as well. Obviously, he's not running his services as much, but pay attention. 'Cause time Matt puts anything out, I think of it as gold. Like he's the marketing guy I always look at. So. Pay attention to anything he does, and that's it for today. So I'll talk to you guys next time, and I'll see you. All right.
Thanks, Douglas.